J.K. Rowling Kakor, The Girl Who Would Not Give Up. Chapter 1. A Quiet Little Girl. Joanne Rowling was born in a small town in England. People called her Jo. Jo was a quiet child. She liked soft sounds, gentle voices, and rainy days. When rain touched the window, she felt calm. It sounded like a tiny drum playing just for her. Jo loved books more than toys. She carried books everywhere. At home she read, in the kitchen, on the sofa, under a warm blanket, and sometimes even in the garden. She liked stories about magic, brave children, and hidden worlds. Sometimes she told her little sister bedtime stories. Her sister listened with wide eyes. Jo felt happy when she could make someone smile with her words. She was not the tallest or the strongest kid at school. She was not the best at sports, but she had a bright imagination. When the teacher said, "Write something," Jo's pencil moved fast as if it already knew where the story wanted to go. Her parents were kind people. They encouraged her curiosity. They never told her, "Stories are useless." Instead, they said, "Keep reading, Jo. Keep dreaming." And she did. Chapter 2. Stories everywhere. When Jo was a teenager, she filled many notebooks. She wrote on the bus. She wrote during lunch. She wrote before sleeping. Stories followed her like friendly shadows. Sometimes her friends talked about fashion, parties, and boys. Jo listened, but her mind often floated away into a world with castles, forests, and talking animals. She was there even when she sat in a noisy classroom. Her teachers noticed her imagination. One teacher said, "Jo, you have a gift. Don't lose it." Jo kept that sentence in her heart. It felt like a small candle that stayed lit even in the dark. At home, books were everywhere. On shelves, on tables, beside her bed. Books were her friends. When she felt lonely or confused, she opened a book and felt safe again. She often looked out the window and wondered, "What kind of woman will I become? Will my stories matter to anyone?" Time would answer that question, but not yet. Chapter 3. The University Years. When Jo finished high school, she went to university. She studied languages, French, Latin, and others. She loved words, how they sounded, how they changed, how they could make a person feel something. She read more books. She wrote more stories. Her notebooks became small treasures to her. But after university, life became confusing again. She didn't know what job to choose. She was young, full of dreams, but also full of worries. Everyone around her seemed to know what they wanted, but Jo didn't. She tried to be brave. She tried to move forward, but every step felt like walking in fog. She took a job, then another, then another. Nothing felt right. She asked herself many times, "Is something wrong with me?" But deep down she knew the truth. Writing was the only thing that made her heart feel alive. Chapter 4. The World Feels Heavy. Jo worked in offices. She typed papers, answered phones, copied documents, typed again, smiled politely. But her soul felt tired. Every morning she walked to work, her feet slow, her heart even slower. At lunch, she often sat alone with her notebook. She wasn't lonely. Her characters kept her company. They spoke to her quietly, waiting to be written down. Sometimes she cried at night. She felt like she wasn't going anywhere. But she also felt something inside her, something stubborn, something that refused to quit. Her dream whispered, "Write, just write." But another voice answered, "You cannot live with dreams. You need money. You need safety." Both voices were real. Both voices were strong. And Jo stood between them, not knowing which path to follow. Chapter 5. A New Country. One day, Jo decided to move to Portugal. She wanted a fresh start. She wanted adventure. She wanted to see the world outside the small town she grew up in. Portugal was warm and colorful. The language sounded like music. The streets were bright and full of life. Jo found a job teaching English. She liked her students. She liked the sea. She liked the sunset over the orange rooftops. But life was not simple. Her heart was still searching for something. She wanted love, family, and stability. She met a man. They married. For a moment, Jo hoped she had found her happy ending, but the marriage soon became painful. It was not safe. It was not kind. Jo felt scared and alone. She decided to leave. It was the hardest choice of her life, but she made it, and she was not alone. She had her baby girl. Chapter 6. A Mother's Love. Jo returned to England with her baby daughter. She had no money, no job, no partner. Only hope and a tiny child who needed her. Some days were cold. Some days she couldn't afford food. Some days she felt like she was drowning in fear. But when she held her baby, warm and small in her arms, she said to herself, "I must not give up, not now." She loved her daughter deeply, and that love gave her strength. Every time her baby slept, Jo opened her notebook. She wrote quietly. Her hand moved slowly, but it moved. She didn't write for money. She didn't write for fame. She wrote because she had to. She wrote because stories kept her alive. Chapter 7. The Train Ride. One rainy afternoon, Jo sat on a train traveling from Manchester to London. The train was late. The air was cold. People sighed and complained. But Jo didn't mind. She looked out the window, watching the gray world slide by. And then it happened. A boy appeared in her mind. A thin boy with messy black hair, round glasses, a lightning-shaped scar. He didn't know he was a wizard. Not yet. Jo felt a spark inside her. Her heart beat faster. "This is the story," she whispered. The train finally moved again, but Jo stayed in that moment. The moment when a boy named Harry Potter was born, inside her imagination. Chapter 8. Writing into the Cafe. Jo had no office, no money for a quiet workspace, so she wrote in a warm cafe near her home. The cafe had big windows and small round tables. People talked softly, cups clinked, steam rose from hot coffee. Jo liked that place. It felt safe. It felt peaceful. She pushed her daughter's stroller beside her, took out her notebook, and wrote. Sometimes she cried as she wrote, not because the story was sad, but because life was so hard. She was scared she would never finish the book. But she kept going, page after page, day after day. Rainy day, sunny day, tired day, hopeful day. She wrote because she believed the story mattered. She believed Harry mattered. Chapter 9. Rejections. When Jo finished the book, she sent it to publishers. One said no, another said no, a third also said no, 7 said no, 10 said no, 12 said no. Jo felt her chest tighten. Was she foolish to dream? Was her story worthless? Should she quit? But she couldn't quit. She had come too far. Finally, a small publisher said yes, a very small publisher. They didn't know if the book would sell, but they liked Harry. They printed only 500 copies, just 500. It was not a big start, but it was a beginning. Chapter 10. Magic Spreads. Something unexpected happened. Teachers loved the book. Children loved the book. Parents loved the book. People wanted more. Kids talked about Harry at school. They pretended to fly on broomsticks. They waited for the next chapter. They asked their parents, "Is the next book ready yet?" Bookstores sold out. Libraries had long waiting lists. Teachers read the book aloud in classrooms. The magic spread, not only in England but across the world. Jo could hardly believe it. Her story, the one she wrote in a cafe while struggling to survive, was now filling thousands of hearts. Chapter 11. From Fear to Freedom. Each new book made the world louder with excitement. People dressed like Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Children waited outside bookstores at midnight. Adults did too. Suddenly, Jo was not poor anymore. She could buy food. She could pay the rent. She could give her daughter a safe home. She could breathe again. But more importantly, she learned something powerful. Her darkest days created her brightest magic. Her fear, her loneliness, her courage, her stubborn hope. All of it became part of the story that millions of people loved. She once thought she was nobody. Now she understood that her voice mattered. Chapter 12. The Woman Who Did Not Quit. Jo became one of the most famous authors in history. But she never forgot who she was. A girl who loved rainy days. A girl who loved stories. A mother who wrote in cafes. A woman who refused to quit. She told her readers, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." Her story is a reminder that magic is not only in books. Magic is also in courage, in hope, in trying again, in believing your voice matters even when no one else does. Jo's journey began in a small town with a quiet girl and a big imagination, and it grew into a world that millions of people now carry inside their hearts, because she wrote, because she didn't stop, because she believed.